In this series of videos, we're taking a look at one of the most important programming paradigms in use in industry today, Object-Oriented Programming, or OOP for short. In this video, we start by looking at classes, objects, methods, and attributes. Object-oriented programming relies on objects in the real world being represented or classified, and then every object identified being placed into its own class. This concept can seem a bit abstract and confusing at first, so let's look at an example to make things easier to understand. All classes have three main sections to them. The class's name, its attributes, that's all the information that's generic to objects of this class type, and its methods, that's the bits of code that allow you to get to the data and manipulate them. Let's look at the example of the person object. And here it is in the form of the class diagram. What can we say about a person object from this class diagram? Well, we can tell that the class is called person, and that all objects of this class would be therefore a single person. Each person has two bits of data or attributes associated with them, which is their name and their address. And each person has four methods or routines of code associated with them. Two for outputting the details of the person's name and address, and two for setting the person's name and address. This diagram is known as a class diagram. The best way to think of a class is like a template. We use it to set out or define what attributes and methods an object of a certain type should have. This class is not an actual object itself. It's just the cutting tool which makes sure that every object we make from that class looks the same. This is one of the major benefits of OOP. Once we've written a class, decided what attribute and code it should have, it becomes incredibly easy to reuse that class and to create hundreds of objects of that class. So here we have that person class or template again. Remember, it doesn't actually represent a real instance of a person yet. It just defines or tells us what all people will have to look like. They'll need to have a name, they'll need to have an address. When we want to create an actual copy or an instance of a class, we can use a single line of code to create it using the word new. This in OOP is called instantiation, the creation or bringing to life of an object. Look at our abstract diagram again here. We're now going to instantiate or bring into being three objects of the class person. These are now actual separate object entities that exist in our program held in memory, each with their own attributes and methods. Now let's take this out of the abstract and see how this will actually look in pseudocode. Okay, so here we are. We have an example now of some of the pseudocode you see in an exam for a class. So the class starts here with the keyword class followed by the name of the class person and ends here. At the top are the attributes of the class, in this case name and address. We can ignore what the words private mean, that will be explained in a later video. So there's our attributes for our person class name and address. We then see the procedures. Now if you remember, we had four procedures before. There's two here, starting and ending, for setting the name and setting the address. And there's two here for outputting the name and outputting the address. So they're the four methods. We see here a fifth method. Now you've got to take careful note of this one. This procedure is different to the others in that it has the keyword new just here. This procedure is what is known as a constructor, and every class will have a constructor method which will be signified by the word new. The constructor is a special method within the class which runs when an object of this class type is created. In this case, you can see it takes the values of the parameters that have been passed in to the person object and then uses those to set the local attributes, name and address. Now remember that all this code here on the left is just the template for the person class. We use the following lines in our code which actually instantiates or creates, brings into being 3 person objects. So we can call them whatever we like. We've called them person 1, person 2 and person 3, and we create them by saying they become equal to a new person object, and then we pass in whatever data is required in the instructor. So here we've created 3 person objects, person 1, person 2, person 3, each with their own private attributes and settings, and they all exist separately in memory. Now that these 3 objects exist in memory, we can use the simple dot suffix to call the methods. So person1 dot output name, make sure that the output name method that belongs to person 1 is run. So if we ran the output name code for the person 1 object, what would be displayed on screen? Work through these and see if you can tell what gets chucked out when each of these methods are run on these objects. Check your answers. How did you do?